What's up, guys? Doberman philosopher. Wanted to touch on something. I recently saw that Andrew Tate has accepted Islam, and I hear his reasonings for it. And while I definitely see where he's coming from, I think they're kind of lousy reasons to convert to Islam. I do agree with him that Muslims definitely take their religion a lot more seriously than most Christians do nowadays. He gives the example of, if I wore a t-shirt that said Jesus is gay in a Christian country, I would walk out and be fine. But if I, did the same thing with Muhammad in a Muslim country, I wouldn't walk out alive. And so Islam is, they're willing to, people are afraid to offend them because, they'll react violently against them. I think that's a reason not to accept Islam. You look at, to me, it's a barbaric, it's like a caveman. And again, I love Andrew Tate. I have nothing but respect for him. I understand what he's saying, and what he's saying is true. But I think that it's kind of a non sequitur. Like, yes, it's true, but the conclusion that he's coming to accept Islam because of that, I think is it's bad logic. But that's just me, Yes, Muslims take their religion very seriously. Yes, they're willing to react violently if you offend their religion. But to me, it also shows that if their reaction is to react with violence against criticism of the religion, then what is that? Yes, it does say that they're serious about it. They do enforce their rules. They enforce defense of the faith. And in a certain sense, I could understand why someone would respect that. But at the same time, it also could be used as a very good argument in why Islam and the West are incompatible societies, and they should not mix. Because in the West, we have a thing called civil discourse, where I can disagree with your religion. I can point out absolute, hypocrisies, things that are completely logically inconsistent, just ideas that are completely ridiculous. And I can say that, and I can say it with the understanding that I'm disagreeing with the philosophy of the religion, not insulting the actual people who practice it. And I can say it and walk in, and I can voice my opinion that I think someone's belief is completely wrong, and I can even disagree with their prophets and say that I think their whole revelation is complete bullshit, and walk out alive and not have to worry about my life being threatened. Okay, that's part of having civil discourse, and I would say, to use a comparison is, you look at Judaism, okay? The Jews are very willing to defend Israel. They've done it successfully in multiple wars. The War of Independence in 1948, the war in 1956, the war in 1967, the war in 1973. They're willing. They're actively defending against Iranian nuclear missiles being put in Syria. But think about what Kanye West said about the Jews. And okay, you can say, well, they canceled him. Well, I mean, the Jews didn't cancel him, like his corporate sponsors canceled him. And if you think about it, if a white person had said what Kanye said about Jews but about blacks, he'd have been canceled too. So using this whole, this misusing Voltaire's statement on YouTube, which I see a lot of people doing, of, if you want to find out who controls you, find out who you can't criticize. Well, if Ben Affleck, just using Ben Affleck for the sake of this argument, if Ben Affleck decided to say something on the same level of egregiousness as Kanye said about Jews, going DEFCON 3 on the Jewish community, but if he said it about blacks or Latinos, believe me, Ben Affleck would be canceled. Okay? Does that mean that black people control the world? No, it means that, and again, I don't think anybody should be canceled. Do I think Kanye should be canceled? Absolutely fucking not. But business is business, and businesses are going to do what's in their best interest to maintain their brand to consumers, because at the end of the day, it is about the bottom line for a business. They need to drive revenue. They need to get profits. They need to show profitability to shareholders. And that, unfortunately, is the reality. So, but has Kanye West received death threats from Jews? Like, no. Have there been attacks on Kanye West's life and death threats about him from Jewish people? No. Because Jewish people don't react with that type of violence if somebody criticizes not only just their religion, but their community. I mean, imagine what the response from Muslims would be if Kanye West said something insulting about Islam. It would be imagine if David Duke had said half the things he said about the Jews, but about Muslims. Like Louis Farrakhan. Has Louis Farrakhan ever had Jews trying to kill him? Has David Duke ever had, you might have Jewish politicians or meet people in high media trying to silence him, but they're not trying to kill him, okay? So, and to me, looking at history, no one has accrued more oppression than the Jews throughout history. I mean, you look at, everybody knows about the Holocaust, but let's look at the Spanish Inquisition. Let's look at the pogroms, which started in 1096 with the First Crusades. Let's look at all the Black Plague. Let's look at how they were falsely accused of spreading that. Being expelled by the Romans and that which starting the Great Diaspora in 70 A.D. So, coming to this country and being despised and hated and having not being able to live in certain areas, not being able to enter into certain professions in Europe for thousands of years. Like, the Jews have had to overcome a lot, but they overcome it by adapting and developing skills in certain areas that they can operate in and becoming great at it. So I really, when I always like to look at certain things in by comparing it, but it's compared to what? I say compared to what? Okay, yes, Islam is growing at a much faster rate. It's the fastest growing religion on earth. We all know this, okay? But to me, whatever is popular is usually wrong. Whatever most people are doing, it's usually wrong to me. And I look at the Jews as compared to the Muslims, and they're. I think you could definitely make a very compelling argument that the Jews are the most hated people in the world. And again, I'm not saying it's not justified in my opinion, but it is something that I think is pretty axiomatic, especially if you have even a modicum of understanding of history. So, again, God bless him. I hope that, I like Andrew Tate. I have nothing but respect for him, and I've voiced my support for him on this channel before, and I'm voicing it right now. I think he's definitely a champion of awareness for the plights that men find themselves in this decadent culture that's becoming very hostile to men. He's brought attention to a lot of men's issues that I think have been completely ignored by society at large, and his advice for young guys I think is very sound. But I do disagree with him on the Muslim thing. One second. I mean, if you look at Muslim countries, they've got some of the worst human rights violations, some of the worst literacy rates, some of the poorest countries. It is a religion that was spread by the sword, by their exact prophet Muhammad. And, to me, if something is spread by the sword, then it must not be very logically sound on its own. That's how I've always, viewed things. But, yeah, just thinking here. It's kind of late at night here, but just don't think that's a really good reason to convert to a religion. I will say though, he does bring up some very interesting points. In a lot of ways, Islam is the last man standing against, this postmodern third wave feminist, philosophy. It really is in many ways. I mean, you're right. Like, they don't LGBTQ and all the gender dysphoria and gender fluidity is not going to fly in Islam. Women going around looking like whores, not going to fly in the Muslim world. And for that, I do respect Islam. I mean, I have my criticisms of Islam, but I also do have my respect for Islam. And I also was very, interested in converting to Islam actually at one time in my life. In a lot of ways, and it was because of what Andrew Tate, espoused. So, I do identify with him, and I'm very, respectful in his, even though I think it's bad logic, and I now see that my mistake in it. I do understand and respect Andrew Tate converting to Islam, even though I don't agree with it, because I was once there myself, because of my disillusionment, my disdain for, feminism in the West, and the dilemma and the dynamic of male to female relationships, and how deleterious of effects it's had on us in our relationships. So there's definitely, I definitely can relate to him on that. But if I look at I'm 34 now, and I've had, I was very interested in Islam in my early 20s. I visited many mosques. I studied with many different imams. I went to school for international relations, and I specialized in the Middle East. I learned Arabic for 2.5 years. So, I not to say that I'm an imam or that I'm an Islamic scholar, but I've definitely, I've read Al-Ghazali, I've read, Ibn Talib, I've read the Muqaddimah. Ibn Khaldun, who wrote that, they say the father of sociology. So I'm very respectful of Islam. I think Islam's kind of in its dark ages right now, although it was in its golden age under the Ottoman Empire, but, I will say that Muslims in large do follow the religion a lot more closer to the book, to the letter of the law, will have you, than Christians do. And I do think that Christians have had a despicable history. I'm an atheist myself. I do not just. I don't have a religion. I don't have a leaning towards any of them. I don't have an allegiance towards any religious group of people or anything like that. But I look at how different groups have adapted, and I do have more of a respect towards how the Jews have adapted than the Muslims. And, you know, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, look at Israel. And I mean, Israel is surrounded by 23 Arab countries that, if they had it their way, would probably wipe them off the face of the earth. And I know that, you know, 6 Arab countries have made peace with Israel, 4 in, I think, the year of 2020 alone, or 2021. But, you know, that doesn't mean that the general people feel the same way about their peace treaties. They're very much, especially with Egypt and Jordan, it's very much a cold peace there. It's not a friendship, you know, it's more of a, we won't fuck with you, you don't fuck with us type of a thing. So, you know, I get it. You know, it's popular, it's cool to be Muslim right now. You know, it's kind of the in thing to do. It's kind of a you know, stick it to the West, stick it to feminism, which, hey, I get it, you know, I hate that shit too, but, you know, just because something opposes something that's wrong doesn't mean what the opposition to what's wrong is right also. They may be correct about their critique of the West in many ways, but their solution to it, I think, that's what I think Andrew Tate's missing is I think that he's correct that the Muslims are correctly in opposition to a lot of the, you know, moral degradations and just, you know, debauchery that is pervasive in the West. But I think that what he fails to see is that the Muslim response is also incorrect. I do agree that they should maintain their culture. They should maintain their religion, but, you know, issuing multiple death threats to some Swedish cartoonist who makes a caricature of Muhammad in a unsavory manner is not a recipe to getting killed. That is, in my opinion, indicative of a barbaric society, of a society that is not able to handle pluralism, a you know, many different opinions. There, you know, if you can't handle, it's almost like as a kid, right? You know, if you're a kid and you take everything so seriously and you get super pissed off if anybody says anything that offends you, like you're gonna get fucked with. You're gonna get picked on. You know, you have to be able to, again, stand up for yourself, but stand up for yourself in a civil, you know, mature, sophisticated manner. You don't need to be a fucking caveman if somebody, you know, insults you. I mean, there's a time to be violent, and I'm all for defense. Believe me, I'm all for guns. I'm all for martial arts. I'm all for standing up for what you believe in. I'm all for, you know, if somebody fucks with you, you have every right to. If somebody makes fun of you, you damn well better fucking stand up for yourself. And if it comes to blows, then that's what it's going to come to. But, you know, to just have this visceral reaction of violence towards any criticism of their religion, I think, is really, you know, distasteful and unsophisticated and just, you know, it's just backwards in my opinion. So, you know, that's my opinion of it. Again, you know, I respect Andrew Tate. I'm definitely a supporter of his. I think he's a great man. I respect and admire what he's been able to accomplish, especially because I know that he did do it himself. And any man that you know comes from, you know, the project, he grew up in the projects of Lawton, and he's made it his own way. And for that, you know, I think you got to have respect for the man. So this is not you know, a slap in the face towards him. It's not an insult. It's not a diss. It's just, you know, I happen to disagree with his conclusion. I agree with his analysis of the problem. I disagree, however, with what he believes is the solution. I do not believe the solution is Islam. So with that, I'll end this video. Hope you guys got something out of it. I'm out.